The New York City skyline shimmered beyond the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, its lights casting reflections on the polished marble floors. Emily Madison Hughes stood silently, her gaze unfocused, as she stared at the glittering horizon. There had been a time when this view left her in awe, a time when it symbolized endless dreams and possibilities. But that was years ago. Now the very lights that once captivated her seemed cold and distant, mocking the hollowness of her existence. Emily's hands trembled as she placed a small, white envelope on Adrian Hughes's mahogany desk. Next to it, she laid down her wedding ring, the diamond catching the city's lights and scattering prisms across the room. The final item she set down was a pregnancy test, the proof of a life growing inside her, a life she had sworn to protect from the suffocating void her marriage had become. For 5 long years, she had been Mrs. Hughes, a perfectly composed figure in designer gowns, attending endless galas and charity events. To the outside world, she lived a life of privilege and glamour. Inside, however, she was a prisoner, trapped by appearances, by expectations, and most of all by Adrian's relentless pursuit of control and perfection. Tonight, that life was over. Emily was no longer the accessory that adorned Adrian's empire. She was a woman reclaiming her identity, preparing to return to the one place where she had once felt whole, her family's vineyard in Napa Valley. Memories flooded Emily's mind as she stood alone in the stillness of the penthouse. She recalled the countless nights she spent waiting in the shadows, hoping Adrian would come home before midnight. But when he did, he barely acknowledged her presence, walking past as if she were invisible. His usual excuse echoed in her mind: "I have early meetings." To Adrian, she wasn't a partner. She was merely a piece of his carefully curated image. The painful memory of last week's charity gala resurfaced, sharp and vivid. Emily had stood amidst a group of investors attempting to discuss a charitable initiative. Before she could finish, Adrian had patted her hand condescendingly and addressed the crowd. "My wife. She's quite decorative, isn't she? Though I'm afraid that's the extent of her contributions." Polite laughter rippled through the group. Emily had struggled to keep her hands from trembling as she quietly retreated, their judgmental eyes following her. Later that night, she had locked herself in the marble bathroom and muffled her sobs, just like so many nights before. But this time was different. This time, she had made a choice. She was done enduring. "Mrs. Hughes?" Maria's voice came from the doorway. The housekeeper's weathered face was etched with concern. "The car's ready, ma'am." Emily inhaled deeply, gathering every ounce of courage she had, and nodded. "Thank you, Maria, for everything." Maria stepped forward, pressing a small package into her hands. "Your favorite herbal tea, it'll help with the morning sickness." Her eyes were warm and knowing. "Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is walk away." Tears threatened to fall, but Emily blinked them back. She had shed enough tears in this house. Taking a deep breath, she smoothed down her simple black dress, a far cry from the designer clothes Adrian had always insisted she wear. Tonight, she wasn't Adrian Hughes' trophy wife. She was Emily Madison, a woman choosing freedom for herself and her unborn child. Emily stepped into the elevator, her mind a storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. The polished metal doors slid shut behind her with a muted echo, as if closing off the last chapter of a life built on appearances and loneliness. For a moment, she exhaled deeply, feeling the weight on her chest begin to lift for the first time in years. She took a slow, measured breath, each second stretching out as the elevator silently descended. In the grand lobby, Marcus, the building's loyal doorman, looked up as she approached. His eyes reflected a deep understanding and quiet empathy. He had seen her walk through this lobby too many times with tear-streaked cheeks after lonely, sleepless nights. "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Hughes," he said softly, holding the large glass door open for her. Emily paused for a moment, her lips curving into a faint smile. "It's just Emily Madison now." Marcus gave a respectful nod without further comment. She stepped outside, leaving behind the glittering facade of the life that had trapped her for so long. A sleek black car waited by the curb. Richard, her uncle's trusted driver, opened the door for her. Her small suitcase was swiftly placed in the trunk. Emily slowly eased herself into the back seat, her hand instinctively resting on her stomach. "Let's go," she murmured, her voice soft but resolute. As the car pulled away from the curb, she caught a final glimpse of the towering building that had been her gilded cage for the past 5 years. She didn't look back. Instead, she spoke quietly to the life growing inside her, her words a solemn promise. "You'll never feel unloved, I promise." The city lights faded into the distance as the car merged into traffic, heading toward the airport and the path to freedom. The warm California sun bathed the endless rows of grapevines in a golden glow as the car traveled down the familiar dirt roads leading to her family's vineyard. The scene pulled Emily back to her childhood. Days spent running barefoot between the vines, breathing in the earthy scent of the land and the delicate fragrance of wildflowers. From the rearview mirror, Richard gave her a reassuring smile. "Almost there, Miss Emily. Home's been waiting for you." Emily nodded, but her heart remained conflicted, both heavy with the ghosts of her recent past and cautiously hopeful. She glanced out the window at the familiar landscape, her mind drifting to memories of her mother's voice whispering comfort among the vines. This was her sanctuary, yet she knew healing would not come instantly. She gazed out the window at the vineyard, where clusters of ripe grapes shimmered in the sunlight. In the distance, the family villa came into view, a Mediterranean-style house with whitewashed walls and red-tiled roofs, standing proudly amidst the sea of green. The car turned onto the stone-paved driveway leading up to the main house. On the front porch, Uncle Leo waited, his sturdy frame silhouetted against the warm glow of the late afternoon sun. Though older now, he still exuded the quiet strength of a man deeply rooted in the land. One look at Emily, and his eyes softened with understanding. "Auze, my darling niece, you're finally home," Uncle Leo greeted her warmly, opening his arms wide. Emily stepped forward and sank into the embrace, inhaling the familiar scent of oak and sunshine clinging to his jacket. Tears threatened to fall, but this time they carried a sense of release. "I was afraid I'd never feel this again." "You're here now, and that's all that matters. We'll take care of you, Emily," he promised with quiet conviction. From inside the house, Aunt Sophie appeared, her hands dusted with flour. "Good heavens, look at you, skin and bones. What have you been eating all these years, air and water?" Emily laughed, a genuine, unexpected sound. Aunt Sophie grabbed her gently and ushered her inside, chattering about the meal she had prepared, fresh bread, ripe fruit, and their family's signature wine. For the first time in years, Emily felt like she had crossed a threshold, not just into a house, but into the comforting warmth of home. Emily stepped into the grand house, immediately enveloped by the comforting warmth she had missed for so long. The scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the earthy aroma of oak barrels, filling the air. At the large wooden table in the center of the room, Aunt Sophie was already bustling, arranging a spread of delicious homemade food. "Sit down, sweetheart," Aunt Sophie said, gently guiding Emily into a chair. "You need to eat something. No one's here to control your meals anymore." Emily smiled softly, though a pang of sorrow tugged at her chest. In New York, Adrian had insisted she follow a strict diet overseen by nutritionists to maintain the perfect image. Now, the sight of simple food, bread, cheese, and fresh fruit, brought her an overwhelming sense of comfort and healing. "You need rest," Aunt Sophie continued, settling across from her. "We've got your room all ready. It's just the way you left it, though we may need to make a few changes soon." Her gaze shifted subtly to Emily's midsection, where the faint curve of her pregnancy was beginning to show. Emily placed a protective hand over her stomach, feeling the growing life within her. "You already know?" Emily asked softly, her voice laced with surprise. "Didn't need anyone to tell me," Aunt Sophie replied with a knowing smile. "I can see it in your face. Plus, I've got a bit of intuition when it comes to these things." Uncle Leo entered the room moments later, setting a stack of clean towels on a nearby shelf. "We'll take care of both of you," he said firmly. "You don't have to worry about anything anymore. This is your home, Emily, and we won't let anyone hurt you again." A wave of relief and safety washed over Emily, bringing tears to her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt the true meaning of home, a place of belonging, love, and healing. Adrian Hughes entered the penthouse close to 3 a.m., exhausted after a grueling day of business. The silence that greeted him was something he normally welcomed. He had grown accustomed to not hearing pointless conversations about someone's day or Emily's futile attempts to connect with him, but tonight the stillness felt unsettling. As he stepped into his office, he noticed something was off. A familiar scent hung in the air. Jasmine, Emily's perfume. She never entered his office. It was an unspoken rule between them. But tonight it seemed she had broken that rule. His gaze fell upon the desk, where three objects lay waiting. The glittering diamond wedding ring, a pristine white envelope with his name written in Emily's elegant handwriting, and something else, a pregnancy test. Adrian's chest tightened. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath, but his hands shook slightly as he reached for the envelope. He opened the letter carefully, an unfamiliar feeling of dread settling over him. Emily's words hit him like a series of sharp blows, each line cutting through the armor of detachment he had meticulously built. "Adrian, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not for a few days or weeks. Forever. I've spent 5 years trying to turn this marriage into something real, but you can't change because you don't want to. I've endured enough, but now there's someone else to consider. Our child." Adrian paused, his eyes shifting to the pregnancy test on the desk. The word positive glared back at him like an accusation. He continued reading the final lines of the letter. "Don't try to find me. Your power and wealth won't reach where I'm going. Consider this my gift to you. Freedom from the burden of pretending to be a husband. You can finally live the way you want, completely alone." The letter slipped from his hand, fluttering to the floor like the fragile remains of their broken marriage. For a moment, Adrian stood frozen, her words echoing in his mind like the final toll of a bell, cold, resolute, and unrelenting. The weight of her departure crushed him in a way no corporate loss ever had. Then panic surged. He grabbed his phone and called his head of security. "Find Emily, now," he demanded, his voice tight with urgency. But within minutes, he received a grim report. Her credit cards hadn't been used, her phone was off, and the last footage showed her leaving the building at midnight in a car owned by her uncle. Every plan to track her down hit a wall. Her family had shielded her, blocking his influence at every turn. Standing alone in the silence of the penthouse, Adrian felt something he hadn't experienced in years: fear. The fear of losing something that no amount of money could ever replace. In the days following her return to the vineyard, Emily slowly began reconnecting with herself and the land that had shaped her. Morning sunlight shimmered across the rows of grapevines, casting a golden glow on the dewdrops that clung to the leaves. She walked slowly through the vineyard, taking deep breaths of the familiar earthy air, feeling the peaceful rhythm of a life she had lost during her years in New York's suffocating world of appearances. Each morning, she rose early to help Aunt Sophie prepare breakfast for the vineyard workers. Simple tasks like kneading dough, baking bread, and harvesting fresh vegetables brought a quiet sense of healing to her soul. One quiet afternoon, Emily sat on the porch, her gaze drifting over the sprawling vineyard. Memories of her mother, Catherine, surfaced. Memories of a woman who had taught her to cherish the land and to find beauty in life's simple moments. Her mother had passed away many years ago, leaving a deep void in Emily's life. Uncle Leo joined her, sitting down with a gentle expression. "You know, your mother was always so proud of you," he said softly. "She always believed you would find your way, no matter how hard life might get." Emily smiled faintly, placing a hand over her growing belly. "She's still guiding me even though she's not here. I think I've finally found my way back." "She'd be thrilled to see you now," Uncle Leo replied. "And you don't have to face anything alone anymore. You have your family here, and a whole community ready to support you." Later that afternoon, Emily worked alongside the vineyard crew, pruning the vines and reviewing the vineyard's records with Uncle Leo. The simple, steady rhythm of her tasks grounded her, giving her a sense of ownership over her life once more. For the first time in years, she felt like she was truly living, not just existing as a part of someone else's world. Adrian arrived in Napa Valley with the intention of seeing Emily immediately, but his plans were quickly thwarted. Her family, especially Uncle Leo, refused to let him near her. In a tense conversation at the gates of the vineyard, Uncle Leo made his stance clear. "You won't see Emily unless she's ready. This is family land, and here, your power means nothing." Adrian stood in stunned silence, realizing for the first time that the money and influence he had always relied on held no sway here. After a long pause, he exhaled deeply and asked, What do I need to do? Uncle Leo gestured toward the small nearby town. Prove yourself. We don't need promises or cash. If you truly want to understand Emily, start by learning where she comes from. Adrian made the decision to stay in Napa, taking a job at a small vineyard run by a family friend. His first day was grueling. His hands, accustomed to signing contracts and holding conference calls, struggled to grip tools and carry heavy barrels. Sweat soaked through the old work shirt he had hastily bought from a local shop. The townspeople watched him with suspicion. They knew exactly who he was and what he had done to Emily, but instead of giving up, Adrian patiently learned and worked hard. Jack, the vineyard owner, observed Adrian over several days before offering a curt nod of approval. "You're doing all right. Not bad for a guy who used to think power came from his wallet." Day by day, Adrian found himself slowly adjusting to the rhythm of vineyard life. His muscles ached, his hands blistered, and he cursed under his breath more times than he could count, but he kept going. Over time, he began to notice the small rewards. A smile from Jack when he correctly pruned a vine, a nod of approval from the townspeople as he helped unload grape crates. These moments of connection, built through effort rather than power, began to reshape his understanding of success. For the first time in years, he felt like he was building something real. Emily never expected to face Adrian again under such dire circumstances. The day had started like any other. She woke early, tending to the vineyard and checking the southern fence line. However, by late afternoon, a dull ache began to spread across her lower abdomen. At first, she brushed it off as fatigue, but the pain gradually intensified. Jack, the vineyard owner, found her stumbling between the rows of grapevines. "Emily, are you all right?" She tried to remain composed but couldn't hide the agony on her face. "Jack, I think I need to get to the hospital. The pain, it's too much." Without hesitation, Jack called out to Adrian. "Get the truck, now! We've got to get her out of here!" Adrian rushed over, his face paling as he saw Emily clutching her stomach. "Emily, what's happening?" he asked, fear evident in his voice. The baby's coming," she gasped, sweat pouring down her face. "I didn't think it would be this soon." Together, Adrian and Jack helped Emily into the truck. They sped down the rural road toward the nearest hospital, the bumpy terrain making the situation even more tense. Adrian held her hand tightly the entire ride, speaking softly to reassure her. "You're strong, Emily. You and the baby are going to be okay, I promise." At the hospital, nurses quickly whisked Emily away to the emergency room. Adrian and Jack stood anxiously in the hallway, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on both of them. An hour passed, stretching endlessly. Finally, a doctor emerged with a calm, reassuring expression. "Both mother and baby are safe. The baby was born early but is in good health." Adrian nearly collapsed in relief. He followed the doctor into the recovery room, where Emily lay resting. When she saw him, she offered a weak but genuine smile, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Her baby," she whispered. Adrian sat beside her, gently taking her hand in his. "Emily, thank you for letting me be here with you. I'll never let you go through this alone again." The gentle morning sunlight streamed through the hospital window, casting a warm glow over the room where Emily held her newborn daughter in her arms. The tiny baby, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, slept peacefully against her chest. Adrian stood quietly beside them, his eyes filled with awe and gratitude as he took in the scene before him. "She looks like you," he whispered, his gaze never leaving the baby's serene face. Emily gently ran her fingers over her daughter's delicate hair. "She's a part of both of us, Adrian, but she will grow up surrounded by love, not control and coldness." Adrian nodded, a mixture of sorrow and resolve in his eyes. "I know. I can't change the past, but I want to build a different future for her and for you. I bought a small vineyard nearby. I want to learn how to care for it from the ground up, the way you did. I want our daughter to know both sides of life, love, family, and responsibility." Emily studied him, seeing a man who was no longer the cold, power-obsessed figure she had left behind. Now, he was someone searching for redemption, someone willing to embrace a new way of living. "It's going to be a long road, Adrian," she said softly. "I need time to learn how to trust you again." "I understand," he replied. "I'm not asking for forgiveness overnight. I just want to be near you and our daughter, one day at a time. Outside the room, Uncle Leo and Aunt Sophie entered, carrying fresh flowers and baked goods. "The whole town is thrilled for you and the baby, Emily," Aunt Sophie said, placing the bouquet on the bedside table. "We held a prayer circle last night." Emily smiled, warmth flooding her heart at the support and love surrounding her. Adrian stepped toward the window, gazing out at the sprawling vineyards in the distance. The golden morning sun illuminated his face, revealing a man transformed, a man learning to love without conditions. He turned back to Emily and their child, hope glimmering in his eyes. "Shall we start over?" Adrian asked gently, his voice trembling with both hope and fear. Emily hesitated for a moment, her gaze locking with his. Slowly, she nodded, feeling the weight of both forgiveness and caution. "One day at a time," she agreed, her hand resting protectively over their child. "But I'm willing to try." In her arms, their daughter stirred slightly, as if agreeing with her mother. The warm sunlight bathed the room, signaling a new beginning for all of them.
Everyone needs to sacrifice. Vanessa stared across the glass conference table, tapping her manicured fingernails against her tablet. "Your package is outdated. We're cutting base pay by 40% and restructuring commissions. My name is Jeffrey Maddox, 52 years old with salt and pepper hair that started turning in my 30s. For 15 years, I'd been Senior Vice President of Sales at Trilock Woodworks, a commercial millwork supplier based in Austin, Texas. My business card said SVP, but what I really did was keep the lights on. I personally managed our top 10 accounts. These weren't just clients, they were relationships built over thousands of phone calls, countless dinners, and 15 years of solving problems before they even became problems. I knew the names of their kids, their golf handicaps, their vacation spots. They called me before they called their own teams when they needed something fixed. The new structure will incentivize growth," Vanessa continued, sliding a document across the table. "Everyone's package is being adjusted to align with industry standards." I glanced at the paper. 40% cut to base salary, commission restructure that would make it impossible to earn what I earned now, even with growth. Benefit reductions. Vanessa Claymore had arrived 3 months ago after the acquisition, wearing designer suits and carrying a Harvard MBA. She'd spent her first weeks analyzing spreadsheets and holding closed-door meetings with the new parent company executives. I knew what she saw when she looked at me. Expensive, old school, a relic who should have been grateful just to keep his job. "Is there a timeline for this transition?" I asked, my voice even. "Effective immediately." She smiled tightly. "We need everyone on board with the new direction." I closed the folder, stood up, and extended my hand. "Thank you for the clarity." Her smile faltered. She'd expected arguing, negotiation, maybe even desperation. Instead, she got a handshake and a calm exit. Later that afternoon, I saw her watching me from her office as I packed a few personal items into a cardboard box. Nothing dramatic. Just a photo of my daughters at their college graduations, a pen set from a client, an old sales award. On my way out, I nodded to Thomas, our chief financial officer. He'd been with me since the beginning. His eyes said what his mouth couldn't. This wasn't just about cutting costs. This was about cutting me out. In the parking lot, I didn't slam doors or screech tires. I just placed the box in my trunk, adjusted my mirror, and drove away with 15 years of client relationships that Vanessa had just handed to the competition. I built that sales department brick by brick. When I joined Trilock in 2010, We were a regional player selling $8 million annually. By last year, my team was pushing $73 million, and my personal accounts represented over $12 million of that. My father ran a small cabinet shop in Dallas, taught me everything about wood, joinery, and finishes before I was 16. After college, I bounced between a few sales jobs until I found Trilock. Something clicked there. I understood the products because I'd grown up around them. I could talk technical details with architects and pricing with purchasing managers in the same meeting. The owner, Oliver Wainwright, recognized what I brought to the table. "You're not just selling product," he'd say. "You're selling trust." He gave me room to build my department my way. I hired young, hungry reps and taught them what Oliver taught me. Relationships matter more than transactions. When Oliver sold the company to Driftmore Labs last year, I was concerned but not panicked. Acquisitions were part of the business cycle. I'd navigate it like any other change. The first signs of trouble came when they started replacing the executive team. New CEO from outside the industry, new marketing director who wanted to reimagine our digital presence. Then Vanessa, with her sleek presentations about operational efficiency and resource optimization. Small changes came first. Travel budgets tightened. Customer entertainment accounts required multiple approvals. My weekly meetings with the executive team became monthly, then as needed. "We're just streamlining," Vanessa explained during one of our earlier meetings. "Nothing personal." But it was personal when she started scheduling calls with my key accounts without including me. When she questioned the discounts I'd negotiated years ago that had kept clients loyal through multiple price increases. When she suggested my team needed fresh perspectives and brought in 2 of her former colleagues as new regional managers. Thomas tried to warn me during our quarterly budget review. "They're looking hard at the sales compensation structure," he said quietly, glancing toward the door. "Particularly the legacy arrangements." I was the only legacy arrangement left. A week before that final meeting, I spotted Vanessa having lunch with Gabriella, my newest hire. They were huddled close, speaking intensely. When they saw me walk into the restaurant, Gabriella looked down at her plate while Vanessa waved casually, as if bumping into me was a pleasant surprise. Later, Gabriella avoided eye contact when I asked about the lunch. "Just getting to know the team," she mumbled. I knew then what was coming. Not the details, but the direction. That evening after Vanessa's announcement, I sat in my home office staring at the sales reports from the last decade. 15 years of consistent growth. 15 years of building Trilock Woodworks into an industry leader. 15 years of loyalty being paid back with a dismissive, "Your package is outdated." My phone buzzed. A text from Frank Donnelly, purchasing director at Weston Commercial, our largest account. "Heard rumors about big changes at Trilock. Everything okay? Call me." Frank and I had worked together for 12 years. I'd helped him through 2 company restructures, a divorce, and his son's college applications. We weren't just business associates, we'd become friends. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and called him. "Jeffrey," he answered immediately. "What the hell is going on over there? I got a call from some woman saying she's taking over our account." "That would be Vanessa Claymore, our new sales director," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Well, she started talking about reviewing our pricing structure and implementing some new vendor management system." Frank's voice tightened. "We have a contract and we have processes that work. I don't need someone telling me how to manage my suppliers." I took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch. "Jeffrey," Frank lowered his voice, "are you staying? Because if you're not, we need to talk." In that moment, everything crystallized. My value wasn't in my title or even in my sales numbers. It was in 15 years of trust. 15 years of solving problems instead of creating them. 15 years of relationships that could walk out the door with me. "I'm considering my options," I said carefully. "Well, consider this. If you land somewhere else, give me a call first before I have to deal with Harvard Barbie again." After hanging up, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to Daniel Harrison at Pinnacle Supply Group. We'd met at an industry conference last year, and he'd mentioned they were looking to expand their commercial millwork division. I didn't send it immediately, just saved it to drafts. The next morning, I received calls from 3 more clients, all with similar concerns. Vanessa was already reaching out, already making changes, already disrupting relationships she didn't understand. I drove to the office one last time to finish clearing out my desk. As I packed, Thomas slipped me a folded piece of paper. "Your client retention numbers," he said quietly, "and their average annual spend. Thought you might need it." I nodded, understanding what he was really saying. He knew what I was worth even if Vanessa didn't. That afternoon I finalized my resignation letter, sent the email to Daniel at Pinnacle, and called my lawyer to review my non-compete agreement. I discovered what I'd suspected. It applied to products, not clients. I couldn't sell competitive millwork for 6 months, but nothing prevented me from maintaining my relationships. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt focused, clear. There's a certain power in being underestimated, in being dismissed as outdated. It means they never see you coming until it's too late. I spent 2 weeks exploring my options before accepting Daniel's offer at Pinnacle Supply Group. The role was perfect. Senior Vice President of Business Development with full autonomy to build my own division. "We want your expertise, Jeffrey," Daniel said during our final meeting. "You know what works in this industry. We don't need to reinvent the wheel." The next day I called Vanessa to discuss my resignation and transition plan. I proposed staying 2 weeks to ensure a smooth handoff of my accounts. "That won't be necessary," she said coolly. "We've already been in touch with your clients. Gabriella will be handling the transition." "These relationships are complex," I explained. "There are nuances to each account that take time to—" "We have all your notes in the CRM," she cut me off. "And frankly, your approach was rather old-fashioned. We're implementing a more data-driven client management strategy." I could have argued, but what was the point? She'd made up her mind about me the moment she walked through the door. "I'll have HR process your exit paperwork," she concluded. "Please return all company property by the end of the week." 3 days later, I met Frank from Weston Commercial for lunch. He hadn't returned Gabriella's calls, and Vanessa had escalated to his boss. "Your replacement sent me a client satisfaction survey with 48 questions," Frank said, shaking his head. Then she followed up with a presentation about their new customer success metrics. "I don't need metrics. I need someone who understands our business." I nodded but kept my comments neutral. I wasn't going to badmouth Trilock. "Where are you heading next?" Frank asked directly. "I'm joining Pinnacle as SVP of Business Development." Frank raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. They've been trying to get our business for years." I sipped my water. "I start in 2 weeks." "Well," Frank said, sliding his business card across the table, "call me when you're settled." The next day, I received a certified letter from Trilock's legal department. It reminded me of my non-compete obligations and warned against any improper solicitation of Trilock clients. The letter listed every major account I'd managed by name. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Harold Lang, CEO of Northwell Construction, another top 10 client. "Jeffrey, what the hell? This new woman is trying to change our payment terms. Says our account structure requires optimization. We've been on net 45 for a decade." "I'm no longer with Trilock," I replied carefully. "Yeah, I figured that out when she called. Where'd you land?" I gave him the basics about Pinnacle. Before I could finish, he interrupted. "They handle the same product lines?" "Similar, yes." "Good. Call me Monday. I want to talk options." By the end of the week, I'd received similar calls from 5 more clients. Each conversation followed the same pattern: complaints about Vanessa's approach, questions about my new position, requests to connect once I started. I hadn't solicited a single client. They were coming to me. On my last official day, Vanessa called unexpectedly. "I understand you've been in contact with Trilock clients," she said, her voice tight. "I've spoken with some people, yes. Many of them are personal friends after 15 years. We consider those proprietary business relationships," she said. "Any attempt to redirect that business would constitute a breach of your separation agreement." "I understand my obligations," I replied evenly. "Good," she snapped, "because the last thing you want is a legal battle with Driftmore's attorneys. After hanging up, I forwarded the call recording to my lawyer, the same lawyer who'd confirmed that my non-compete only restricted me from selling millwork for 6 months. Nothing prevented me from selling other construction supplies to those same clients through Pinnacle. Nothing prevented those clients from choosing to follow me. Vanessa had just revealed her first real fear. She was beginning to understand what she'd done by pushing me out the door. My first day at Pinnacle started with a revelation. "We've been trying to break into Triloc's market for years," Daniel admitted during our morning meeting. "Your predecessor spent 18 months courting Weston Commercial without getting past their purchasing department." "Frank Donnelly doesn't trust easily," I agreed. Daniel leaned forward. "Here's what I don't understand. Triloc's client retention rate is nearly 95%, while the industry average hovers around 72%. What's their secret?" I almost laughed. Their secret was sitting right in front of him. "It's not a secret, it's relationships," I explained. "When Oliver ran the company, he understood that contracts might keep clients on paper, but relationships keep them loyal when competitors undercut your prices." Daniel nodded slowly. "And the new management doesn't get that. The new management sees relationships as inefficient. Vanessa wants automated systems, not phone calls." Before I could elaborate, my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Thomas, Triloc's CFO, wanted to meet. We arranged to meet at a quiet bar downtown after work. Thomas looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder as I approached. "I shouldn't be here," he said immediately. "But you are," I replied, ordering us both a drink. Thomas pushed a folder across the table. "The board meeting was yesterday. Thought you should see this." Inside was a copy of Vanessa's quarterly strategy presentation. The first few pages contained standard projections and marketing plans. Then I saw it. Client transition strategy, Maddox accounts. The plan detailed how they would migrate my former clients to Gabriella and 2 new account managers. It included talking points addressing potential objections about my departure and a relationship reclamation timeline. But what caught my attention was the financial projection showing my clients representing not $12 million in annual revenue as I'd always estimated, but $17.3 million, nearly 24% of Triloc's total revenue. "They never told you what your book was really worth," Thomas said quietly. Oliver knew, but after the acquisition, he shrugged. "Why are you showing me this?" Thomas took a long drink. "Because what they're doing isn't right. And because Vanessa's already missing forecasts. She told the board it's temporary disruption during the transition, but the numbers don't lie." He tapped the folder. "She's already lost Northwell, hasn't she?" I didn't confirm or deny. Client decisions weren't my responsibility anymore. "It's going to get worse," Thomas continued. "She's implementing price increases across all legacy accounts next month. The board approved it based on her analysis that we've been underpricing the market for years." Now I understood. Vanessa hadn't just wanted me gone to save on my compensation. She'd seen my client relationships as a barrier to her aggressive revenue strategy. With me out of the picture, she could raise prices, change terms, and implement new systems that would extract more short-term profit from relationships I'd spent years building. "There's something else," Thomas added, voice dropping lower. "They've been auditing your expense reports going back 3 years, looking for any irregularities. They won't find any. I know that, but they're building a narrative. If clients start leaving, they need someone to blame." As Thomas left, he hesitated. "I'm updating my resume. Just thought you should know." Driving home, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't just learning what Vanessa thought of me. I was learning what Triloc had really thought of me all along. My value had been clear in their numbers, but absent from my compensation. They'd been happy to benefit from my relationships while quietly planning to extract more profit from them once I was gone. The truth wasn't just that Vanessa had underestimated me. It was that Triloc had undervalued me for years. 2 months into my new position at Pinnacle, I'd settled into a rhythm. My office overlooked downtown Austin, and my small but growing team included 2 young sales representatives I'd handpicked. I hadn't directly solicited any of my former clients. I didn't need to. They came to me. First was Harold from Northwell, who called the day after Trilock implemented their price increase. "That's a 14% hike with no warning," he fumed. "Can Pinnacle match our original pricing?" We could, and we did, while adding value-added services Trilock had never offered. Then came Westerly Developers, followed by Regional Builders, then Austin Modern Construction. Each had similar complaints: unexpected price increases, rigid new policies, impersonal service. By the end of my second month, 4 of my former top 10 accounts had moved their business to Pinnacle. I made sure each transition was flawless. My team worked weekends to ensure perfect first orders. I personally visited job sites to check deliveries. Word spread through the industry that following Jeffrey Maddox to Pinnacle meant better service at better prices. Then my phone rang with a call from Vanessa. "We need to talk," she said, her usual confidence replaced with thinly veiled panic. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop near Pinnacle's office. Vanessa arrived 15 minutes early, already nursing a latte when I walked in. "This has to stop," she said without preamble. "What exactly?" "You know what. Poaching our clients." I stirred my coffee. "I haven't solicited a single Trilock client." "Bullshit," she snapped, then caught herself. "4 major accounts have left us in 8 weeks. All of them mentioned you by name." "Clients make their own decisions." Vanessa leaned forward. "We can make this easy or hard, Jeffrey. Easy means you back off and we don't pursue legal action for breach of contract." "There's no breach," I replied calmly. "My non-compete prevents me from selling millwork for 6 months. Pinnacle's construction supply division doesn't compete with Trilock's millwork." Her eyes narrowed. "You're exploiting a loophole." "I'm respecting the exact terms of an agreement your legal team drafted." I took a sip of coffee. Perhaps they should have been more careful. "The board is asking questions," she admitted, her voice dropping, "about client retention, about revenue projections." "That sounds like an internal Trilock matter." She tried a different approach. "What do you want? A consulting arrangement? A finder's fee for leaving certain accounts alone?" I almost laughed. She still didn't understand. "I'm not interested in arrangements," I said, standing up. "I'm interested in doing my job well. The rest takes care of itself." The next day, Frank from Weston Commercial called. Their 3-year contract with Trilock was coming up for renewal. "We're putting it out to bid," he said. "Vanessa's been calling me daily, offered to beat any competitor's price by 5%. "That's a good offer," I acknowledged. "Is it? Because I'm looking at more than price here, Jeffrey. I need someone who understands our business, someone who answers the phone at 7 p.m. when a project is in trouble." 2 weeks later, Weston awarded Pinnacle a 2-year supply contract worth $4.2 million annually. It was a major coup, the kind that makes headlines in industry publications. The same day, I received an email from Thomas. It contained only a forwarded internal message from Trilock, announcing that Vanessa was being reassigned to strategic development initiatives, while they conducted a search for a new sales director. I didn't reply to Thomas, or reach out to anyone at Trilock. I simply forwarded Weston's signed contract to Daniel with a note. First of many, planning to reach 20 mailers in new business by year-end. The wheels were in motion, and Vanessa was just beginning to understand the real cost of her miscalculation. 6 months after joining Pinnacle, I stood in the company's conference room surrounded by my team. On the wall-mounted screen was our quarterly performance report, $13.7 million in new business, with projections to hit $22 million by year-end. 8 of my former top 10 Trilock accounts had followed me to Pinnacle. Daniel walked in with a bottle of champagne. "The board just approved your division expansion plan," he announced. "Additional staff, increased marketing budget, everything you asked for." As glasses were passed around, my phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Trilock Q3 earnings call in 30 minutes, or might want to listen in." I stepped away from the celebration to dial into the call. Trilock's new CEO, Raymond Peters, sounded tense as he addressed investors. "While we anticipated some disruption following our strategic restructuring, sales have underperformed against projections. We've experienced unexpected client attrition in our commercial division." An analyst interrupted. "Can you quantify that attrition?" We're seeing estimates that Trilock has lost nearly 20% of its annual revenue in the past 2 quarters. Those numbers are speculative, Raymond deflected. We're implementing an aggressive client retention strategy. Is it accurate that your largest account, Weston Commercial, recently signed with Pinnacle Supply Group? Another analyst pressed. The pause was deafening. We're in ongoing discussions with all our key accounts, Raymond finally responded. As the call continued, I received an email from Gabriella, my former hire who'd sided with Vanessa. The subject line read, "Any openings at Pinnacle?" I rejoined the celebration, declining the champagne. Daniel noticed my expression. "Everything okay?" "Just got some confirmation," I replied. That afternoon, an industry newsletter broke the story. Trilock Woodwork struggles after exodus of key accounts. The article specifically mentioned my move to Pinnacle and the subsequent client migration. It quoted an anonymous Trilock employee stating that the company had fundamentally misunderstood the value of its senior sales leadership. I never had to say a word. The numbers spoke for themselves. A year to the day after Vanessa told me my package was outdated, I sat in my expanded office at Pinnacle reviewing our annual numbers. My division had generated $26.3 million in revenue, exceeding even my ambitious projections. My team had grown from 2 sales representatives to 11, with a dedicated client support staff. We'd moved to a larger floor in the building, and Daniel had hinted at a board position opening up. I kept a photograph on my desk from our division's holiday dinner. Faces relaxed, genuine smiles. A team that understood what I'd always known. Business is built on trust. My assistant buzzed. "There's a Vanessa Claymore here to see you. No appointment." I paused, then nodded. "Send her in." Vanessa looked different, less polished, more tired. Her designer suit had been replaced by something off the rack. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, remaining standing even after I gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you?" "I'm with Hamilton Group now," she explained. "Business consulting. I was hoping to get your perspective on Pinnacle's approach to client retention for a case study I'm developing." I almost laughed at the irony. "I think you already know my approach." She nodded stiffly. "I made a miscalculation at Trilock." "You did?" "The market is talking about how you took down a company without saying a word," she continued. "That's a powerful reputation." I didn't respond. Vanessa hadn't come for a case study. She'd come for absolution or reconciliation. I wasn't offering either. After a moment of awkward silence, she placed her business card on my desk. "If you ever want to discuss industry trends." "I appreciate the offer," I said, standing up, "but I'm fully booked these days." After she left, I glanced at the card, then dropped it in the shredder. That evening, I drove to my daughter's new house for dinner. She'd just been promoted to senior architect at her firm. "How's work, Dad?" she asked as we sat on her patio. "Good," I replied simply, "building something that'll last." And I was. Not with wood this time, but with the same principles that had guided my entire career. Do the work. Keep your promises. Value relationships over transactions. In the end, Vanessa had given me an unexpected gift. She'd forced me to prove, to myself and everyone watching, exactly what 15 years of trust was really worth.
Drink up, it'll help with nerves, my stepfather Craig insisted, watching me closely as he handed me the travel mug. The coffee smelled wrong, bitter with a metallic edge that made my stomach tighten. My name is Andrew Bishop, 26 years old, and still living with my mom and stepfather in Missoula, Montana. Not ideal, but I'd been saving money since graduating, building a portfolio, and finally landed an interview for a marketing coordinator position at Granite Peak Outfitters, the outdoor gear company I'd dreamed of working for since freshman year. I adjusted my tie, feeling Craig's eyes on me. "Thanks, I'll take it to go," I said, keeping my voice casual. The weight of the mug felt heavier than it should have. Craig leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Big day. Wouldn't want anything to get in your way." The words sounded supportive, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. That was Craig Henson in a nutshell. Contractor turned self-proclaimed realist who'd married my mom 4 years ago and never missed a chance to remind me how little he thought of my career choice. 4 years studying advertising just to make brochures, he'd say. Or, "Back in my day, we worked with our hands, not hashtags." I nodded, grabbed my portfolio, and headed for the door. Mom had already left for her nursing shift. Just me and Craig in the house, and that mug of coffee that didn't smell right. At the gas station 2 blocks away, I popped the lid and poured the coffee into the trash. The liquid was darker than it should have been, with an oily sheen on top. My hands shook slightly as I replaced the lid. This wasn't the first time I'd felt that crawling sensation around Craig. 2 weeks earlier, I'd found an unmarked bottle in his truck while looking for jumper cables. The label had worn off, but I recognized the shape. Sleep aids, the strong kind. I'd put it back exactly as I found it and said nothing. Now, as I waited at a red light, I checked my watch. Still plenty of time to grab real coffee before the interview. I couldn't prove anything about what Craig had done, but my gut knew. And this morning, my gut was saying Craig didn't want me getting this job, didn't want me succeeding and moving out. I'd long suspected Craig saw me as competition for my mom's attention. What I hadn't realized until now was how far he might go to keep me under his thumb. I wasn't always this suspicious. Growing up, it was just Mom and me in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. She worked double shifts at St. Patrick Hospital to put food on the table after my father left when I was 3. I barely remember him, just a voice and the smell of pine aftershave. Mom met Craig at the hospital where she works. He'd been doing renovation work on the East Wing, and she came home one day talking about this nice contractor who'd asked her to coffee. I was happy for her. 22 years alone was enough sacrifice for anyone. The first year was good. Craig fixed things around our apartment, took Mom on real dates, and even helped me move into my college dorm. "Good to see a young man getting educated," he'd said, though he added, "Just remember there's no shame in learning a trade if this doesn't work out." The cracks started when I moved back home after graduation. The economy wasn't great, and entry-level marketing jobs were scarce in Missoula. What I'd planned as a 3-month stay had stretched to 14 months. Craig's comments grew sharper. When I'd land a freelance gig, he'd ask how much it paid, then smirk when I told him. When I stayed up late working on my portfolio, he'd walk by and mutter, "Playing with your little pictures again." My mom noticed the tension but tried to smooth things over. "He just wants you to be secure," she'd say. His father was tough on him about finding steady work. Then the strange things started happening. My alarm wouldn't go off before important meetings. My portfolio files would mysteriously move on my laptop. The Wi-Fi would cut out during video interviews. "Technology, huh?" Craig would say, shaking his head. "Unreliable." Last month, I finally got a call from Granite Peak Outfitters. They'd seen my redesigned mock-up of their summer catalog that I'd posted online. They wanted me to interview for their marketing coordinator position. When I told Mom, she hugged me tight. "I always knew you'd find your way," she whispered. Craig was washing dishes, his back to us. All he said was, "Don't count your chickens." That night, I heard them arguing through the wall. My mom's voice, "Why can't you just be happy for him?" Craig's response, lower but clear enough. "This isn't a real career opportunity. He needs to face reality." I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, realizing that Craig would never see me as anything but a disappointment. And worse, he might actively be working to keep me that way. The morning of my interview, I was up before sunrise. I'd pressed my only suit the night before, polished my shoes, and triple-checked that my portfolio was perfect. This wasn't just any opportunity. Granite Peak made the camping gear I'd grown up using, the brand that had fueled my passion for marketing in the first place. I walked into the kitchen at 6:30, and there was Craig, already dressed for work in his contractor's clothes, making coffee. "Big day," he said, not looking up from the counter. "Figured you could use some fuel." Something in his tone made the hair on my neck stand up. Craig never made coffee for me. Never. "That's thoughtful," I said, watching as he poured the dark liquid into my travel mug, the one I'd bought myself with my first freelance check. "Special blend," he added, turning to hand it to me. "Should help with the nerves." Our eyes met as I took the mug, and I saw something I'd never caught before, a flicker of satisfaction, maybe even triumph. His eyes dropped to the mug, then back to my face, waiting. I brought the mug close, pretending to blow on it. The smell hit me, bitter, chemical, with that same metallic edge I'd detected on his breath some mornings when he'd overslept, like the unmarked pills I'd found in his truck. My mind flashed to all the accidents over the past year, the missed alarms, the lost files, the sudden stomach bug I'd developed before a promising phone interview. In that moment, everything crystallized. This wasn't just passive disapproval. Craig was actively sabotaging me. I smiled and said, "Thanks, I'll take it to go." As I walked to my car, mug in hand, a strange calm settled over me. No anger, no panic, just clarity. I drove to the gas station 2 blocks away and dumped the coffee into the trash, watching the oily liquid soak into the crumpled napkins and fast food wrappers. 30 minutes later, I sat in the Granite Peak lobby, sipping a plain black coffee I'd bought from the cafe across the street. My portfolio was open on my lap, but I wasn't reviewing it. Instead, I was mentally cataloging every incident over the past year, seeing them now as connected dots rather than random bad luck. When the interviewer called my name, I stood up feeling more determined than I had in months. This wasn't just about a job anymore. This was about proving something, to myself, to Craig, to the universe. The interview itself passed in a focused blur. I spoke clearly about my ideas for their spring campaign, showed them mock-ups I'd created, and answered their questions with a confidence that surprised even me. "Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Andrew?" the marketing director asked toward the end. "Building something lasting," I said, "creating campaigns that connect people to products that matter in their lives." As I drove home 3 hours later with a job offer and a start date, I thought about the coffee again, about Craig watching me, waiting for me to drink it. I wasn't angry. I was resolved. This game between us was over, and only one of us knew it. I walked through the front door that evening, still riding the high of getting the job offer. Starting salary was decent, benefits after 90 days, and most importantly, a chance to prove myself at a company I respected. I was already mentally packing my bags, calculating how quickly I could afford my own place. The sound of retching stopped me cold. Craig was slumped on the living room couch, a plastic bucket between his knees. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. The empty coffee mug, my mug, sat on the end table beside him. He looked up, eyes narrowing when he saw me. "You're back," he mumbled, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Got the job," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Start Monday." Something flashed across his face, surprise, then something darker. He nodded and bent over the bucket again. My mom came in from the kitchen, concern etched on her face. "Andrew, you're home. How did it go?" "They offered me the position on the spot," I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. She hugged me tight. "That's wonderful. I knew you could do it." Over her shoulder, I watched Craig. He wasn't looking at us, just staring at the floor. "What happened to him?" I asked, pulling away from Mom. "Food poisoning, maybe," she said, lowering her voice. "He's been sick all day, won't say much about it." "All day?" I repeated. "Since when?" "Since morning, right after you left. He said he felt fine, then suddenly he was running for the bathroom. Been that way for hours." I nodded slowly, the pieces clicking into place. Craig must have helped himself to the special pot of coffee after I'd gone, the coffee he'd prepared for me. That night, after Mom had gone to bed and Craig had finally stopped throwing up long enough to sleep, I sat at my desk and opened the small drawer where I kept the unmarked bottle I'd found in his truck weeks earlier. I'd taken it when I found it, replacing it with an identical empty one. Insurance, though I hadn't known what for at the time. The label had worn off, but the small white pills inside matched the powdery residue I'd seen at the bottom of the mug. Crushed sleep aids, mixed with something else. Strong enough to make someone miss an important interview. Maybe strong enough to make them seem impaired. Intoxicated even. The next morning, Craig avoided eye contact at breakfast. He looked better, but still moved gingerly, like his stomach was tender. "Feeling better?" I asked, pouring myself a bowl of cereal. "Fine," he grunted, not looking up from his phone. "Good," I said. "I've got some apartment listings to check out today. Need to find my own place before I start the new job." His head snapped up. "Already? You just got the offer yesterday." "No sense wasting time," I said. "I've saved enough for the deposit and first month's rent. Should be out of your hair by next weekend." "Your mother will miss having you around," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "I'll only be across town," I replied. "We can do Sunday dinners." Craig's jaw tightened. "You know, entry-level jobs are risky. Companies hire young people, work them to death, then let them go before benefits kick in. Might be smarter to stay here, save up more of a cushion." And there it was, the trap. He'd spent months undermining me, even tried to drug me, and now he wanted me to stay under his roof where he could control me. "Thanks for the concern," I said, "but I think it's time." That afternoon, I found an affordable studio apartment 10 minutes from Granite Peak's offices. The landlord liked that I had a job lined up and approved my application on the spot. I signed the lease right there, putting down the deposit I'd been saving for nearly a year. When I got home, Craig was in the garage working on his truck. I walked in, set a folded note inside his open toolbox, and left without a word. The note read, "Whatever you were hoping to ruin didn't work." 3 days later, I was packing boxes in my room when Mom knocked on the doorframe. Her face was drawn, eyes red-rimmed. "Can we talk?" she asked, sitting on the edge of my bed. I nodded, setting down the books I'd been stacking. "Craig told me something this morning," she began, her voice unnaturally steady. "He said you've been hostile toward him, that you left a threatening note in his toolbox." I sat beside her. "Did he tell you what was in his coffee the day of my interview?" Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "The coffee he made specifically for me that morning. The one he got sick from after drinking it himself." Mom's hands twisted in her lap. "He said it was food poisoning from the diner." "He didn't go to any diner that morning, Mom. He was here, making special coffee for me." I crossed to my desk and took out the unmarked pill bottle, setting it in her palm. "I found this in his truck weeks ago. The same stuff was crushed into that coffee." She stared at the bottle, then at me. "That's a serious accusation, Andrew." "Which is why I've kept quiet. I can't prove it was intentional." "Then why?" "Because it's not the first time," I interrupted. My alarm clock being reset before interviews. Files disappearing from my laptop. The Wi-Fi mysteriously failing during video calls with potential employers. Mom's face paled. "He wouldn't..." But her voice lacked conviction. "I thought it was just disapproval at first," I continued. "That he didn't respect my career choice, but it's more than that." Mom stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "This doesn't make sense. Craig has always wanted what's best for us." "For you, maybe," I said quietly. "But I'm competition. I always have been." She stopped, staring at me. "Competition for what?" "For your attention, your respect, your money even." "My money," she echoed. I hadn't wanted to have this conversation, but now that we'd started, I couldn't stop. "Have you checked your savings account lately? Or your retirement fund?" Her face told me everything. I'd suspected for months that Craig was siphoning money, little by little. The new tools he didn't need. The fishing trips with buddies. The cash he always seemed to have despite working fewer hours. "When was the last time you actually saw a bank statement, Mom?" She sank back onto the bed. "Craig handles the bills. Says it stresses me out too much." Her voice was barely audible. "How did you know?" "I saw a notice from the bank in the mail last month. Your account was overdrawn, but I know how careful you are with money. It didn't make sense." Silence stretched between us. Finally, Mom looked up, her eyes clearer now, determined. "Show me everything. she said. Over the next hour, I laid it all out. The patterns of sabotage, the missing money, the way Craig isolated her from her friends, always with reasonable-sounding excuses. How he'd been steering me toward dead-end opportunities while actively undermining the promising ones. I thought he was protective, she whispered. I thought he cared about us. He cares about control, I replied, and he's been losing it little by little ever since I moved back home. Mom stood up again, shoulders straightening. I need to make some calls, to the bank, to a lawyer maybe. I nodded, relief washing through me. I'd been prepared to leave her behind, to escape Craig's manipulation while knowing she remained in its grip. Now, at least, her eyes were open. What about your apartment? She asked. When do you move in? Saturday, I said. But I don't have to. Yes, you do, she cut in, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. You need to start your life, Andrew. I'll handle mine. As she left my room, I realized something had fundamentally shifted between us. For years, I'd been the one who needed protection. Now we were standing on equal ground, allies against a common threat. The next few days passed in a strange, tense silence. Craig seemed to sense something had changed, but couldn't pinpoint what. He watched Mom and me carefully, his usual commentary replaced with wary observation. I continued packing, making arrangements for the move. Mom spent hours on the phone in hushed conversations, often going into the backyard where Craig couldn't overhear. Twice she drove to the bank alone, coming back with a determined set to her jaw. On Thursday night, 2 days before my move, Mom found me in the kitchen making a sandwich. I've opened a new account, she whispered, glancing toward the living room where Craig was watching television. Transferred what was left of my savings. It wasn't much. How much is missing? I asked. Almost $20,000 over the past 3 years, she said, her voice tight. Small withdrawals just under the notification threshold. He forged my signature on some of the forms. I felt sick. That was her retirement money, her security. The bank is investigating, she continued. I've frozen all the accounts he had access to. What about the house payment? The utilities? Taken care of, she said, from my new account. I nodded, impressed by her swift action. What's your plan? I'm meeting with a lawyer on Monday, she said. After you're gone, after you're safe. The protectiveness in her voice caught me off guard. I can stay, Mom. Help you through this. She shook her head firmly. Number. You need to start your job, start your life. I've let him hold us both back for too long. The next evening, my last night in the house, Craig finally confronted me. I was loading boxes into my car when he stepped into the garage, beer in hand. So you're really doing this, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Running off to play with the outdoor crowd? I closed the trunk. It's a good opportunity. Your mother's upset, you know, thinks you're abandoning her. The manipulation was so transparent now that I could spot it a mile away. Actually, she's proud of me, said so herself. Craig's eyes narrowed. You've been different this week, both of you, whispering, making calls. I shrugged. Just busy with the move. He took a step closer. I saw the note you left in my toolbox. Think you're clever, don't you? Just observant, I replied, meeting his gaze. You know, jobs fall through all the time, he said, his voice dropping. Especially for people who aren't reliable, who miss days, who show up impaired. The threat hung in the air between us. I felt a flicker of the old fear, but pushed it away. That would be unfortunate, I agreed. Almost as unfortunate as a bank investigation into forged withdrawal slips. I watched the color drain from his face. Or a doctor questioning what kind of stomach bug matches the symptoms of pharmaceutical sleep aids mixed with alcohol. Craig's expression hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe not, I said, but Mom's lawyer might. I walked past him into the house, heart pounding but steps steady. I'd said too much, shown my hand, but it felt right. Craig needed to know that his actions had consequences, that people were watching now. That night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom, voices rising and falling. I didn't try to listen. Whatever happened next between them was their battle, not mine. In the morning, I finished loading my car early. Mom came out to the driveway to hug me goodbye, pressing a small envelope into my hand. A housewarming gift, she said. Don't open it until you get there. Craig watched from the window but didn't come out, just stayed in his chair, eyes hard, pretending nothing had happened. As I drove away, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I was leaving home, but because for the first time in a long time, it felt like Mom and I were both heading towards something better rather than just surviving where we were. 3 weeks into my new job at Granite Peak, I was settling into a routine. My studio apartment was small, but mine. The marketing team appreciated my ideas. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something. Mom and I talked every few days. She'd filed for divorce the Monday after I left, the same day she met with the lawyer. Craig hadn't taken it well, alternating between rage and desperate promises to change. He keeps saying it was all a misunderstanding, she told me during one call. Claims he was borrowing the money, planning to pay it back. I said nothing. We both knew better. On a crisp Thursday evening, I was heading back to my apartment after work when my phone rang. It was Mom, her voice steadier than I'd heard in years. It's done, she said. The police just left. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. What happened? The bank investigation came through. Forgery on 11 withdrawal slips. Plus, they found prescription drugs in the house that weren't prescribed to either of us. I pulled over, letting the news sink in. Is Craig gone? She said. They arrested him an hour ago. I'm at Aunt June's house now, going to stay with her for a while. After hanging up, I sat in my car, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. I thought about the coffee that morning, how close I'd come to drinking it, how easily things could have gone another way. I didn't feel satisfaction exactly, just quiet relief that a chapter had closed. That evening, a text came through from Mom's phone, a photo of her and Aunt June sitting on the porch of the old farmhouse where Mom had grown up, both women smiling. The message read, "Starting over. Thank you for showing me how." I set my phone down and looked around my small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was honest, clean, mine. Sometimes the best revenge isn't striking back. It's simply walking away and building something better. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room at Granite Peak, presenting my campaign for their winter collection. The executives nodded as I walked them through the concept, authentic stories from real customers, highlighting moments where the gear had made a difference in their outdoor experiences. This connects with our core values perfectly, Andrew, the marketing director said when I finished. We'd like you to lead the project. As I packed up my materials, my phone buzzed, a message from Mom with a photo attached. She was standing in front of a small brick building, holding up a set of keys. Sign the lease today. Coffee shop opens next month. After the divorce settlement and the recovery of most of her savings, she'd decided to pursue the dream she'd put on hold for 20 years, opening a small cafe. She'd moved to Bozeman, close enough to visit but far enough to start fresh. I texted back congratulations, smiling at how much had changed. Craig had taken a plea deal, probation and restitution payments for the financial crimes. Last I heard, he'd moved to Wyoming, working construction jobs, and keeping his head down. That evening, I hiked up to the ridge overlooking Missoula. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and coming snow. I found a flat rock and sat down, taking in the valley spread out below, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. I thought about the bitter coffee, the silent battles, the quiet determination it had taken to break free. Not just from Craig, but from doubt, from the belief that I should settle for less than I deserved. Sometimes victory doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers in the small moments. A mother reclaiming her life, a son finding his path, a weight lifted from both their shoulders. I took out the old travel mug, the one from that morning, which I'd kept as a reminder. Turning it over in my hands one last time, I left it on the ridge among the stones and walked back down the mountain, lighter with each step.
I discovered a pattern of fraudulent transactions while working as a junior analyst. When I showed my boss the evidence, he looked nervous. These clients are too valuable. Let it go, he ordered. The next day, I was laid off for restructuring reasons. I cleared my desk without protest. On my way out, I made one final stop. My name is Matthew Shaw. I was 28 years old and had been a junior financial analyst at Westbrook Investment Partners in Denver for just under 2 years. I spent most days with my head buried in spreadsheets looking for discrepancies that others might miss. I wasn't exceptional at office politics. I rarely joined happy hours. What I was good at was numbers. Numbers don't lie, and patterns don't hide if you know where to look. That's why the Harley Group accounts bothered me. Small inconsistencies at first. Invoice amounts that didn't match our records. Payment routing numbers that cycled through the same 3 destinations. Vendor names that appeared legitimate but had no websites, no addresses I could verify. Curtis Brandt was my direct manager. Nice corner office, expensive golf clubs leaning against his credenza. When I knocked on his door that Tuesday afternoon, folder tucked under my arm, he waved me in without looking up from his computer. "What's up, Shaw?" I placed the folder on his desk. I found something strange in the Harley accounts. His eyes flicked to the folder, then back to me. Strange how? I pointed to the highlighted sections. These transactions are going through shell companies. Same routing patterns, same inflated amounts. It's systematic. Curtis flipped through the pages, his expression hardening with each turn. When he closed the folder, his hand lingered on it for a moment too long. "These clients are too valuable. Let it go," he said. I didn't argue, just nodded. Understood. What he didn't know was that I had already created digital copies of everything. Something in his voice told me I might need them. The next morning, Heather from Human Resources called me in. The company was restructuring. My position was being eliminated. Nothing personal. A severance check would be deposited. "Please clean out your desk by noon." No one looked at me as I packed my things. Odd how quickly you become invisible. I moved to Denver 3 years ago after finishing my master's degree in financial analysis. My grandmother had left me enough money to pay off my student loans, but not much else. She always told me, "Trust your gut, Matthew. Numbers may not lie, but people sure do." She'd raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Westbrook Investment Partners wasn't my dream job, but it was a solid firm with a good reputation. I kept my head down, worked 60-hour weeks, and built a reputation as reliable, if not remarkable. Curtis hired me himself, said he liked my attention to detail. "People miss things," he'd told me during the interview. "I need someone who doesn't." Looking back, there were signs something wasn't right. The Harley Group accounts were untouchable. Only specific people handled their transactions. Questions about their portfolio were deflected or met with vague answers. Once, I overheard Curtis on the phone saying, No one's asking questions. It's handled exactly how we discussed." I ignored those red flags. I was building something here: respect, a career, financial stability. I didn't want complications. There was a senior analyst, Jennifer Riley, who worked in compliance 2 floors down. We'd crossed paths occasionally in the break room. She had a reputation for being meticulous, even intimidating. Once she'd stopped by my desk to check a discrepancy I'd flagged in a different account. "Good catch," she'd said, eyeing my cubicle with its neat stacks of papers. "Not everyone bothers to look this closely." "Just doing my job," I'd replied. She'd studied me for a moment. "Keep doing it that way." Then she'd handed me her card. "If you ever see something that doesn't add up, my door is open." I'd kept her card in my wallet behind my driver's license. Never thought I'd need it. There was another warning sign I'd missed. 2 months ago, another analyst, Trevor, had been fired suddenly. Office rumor was he'd been asking too many questions about certain accounts. I'd assumed he'd messed up somehow, made a serious error. Now I wondered if he'd seen what I'd seen. The day before I discovered the pattern, Curtis had invited me to lunch. Unusual. He'd never done that before. He asked about my career goals, whether I was happy at Westbrook, said I had potential. Looking back, I think he was testing me, seeing if I could be trusted to stay quiet. I failed his test without knowing it was being administered. The morning after I was fired, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen. I'd forwarded copies of the Harley Group files to my personal email before leaving. Not the smartest move legally, but my gut told me something bigger was happening. I created a spreadsheet tracking all the transactions I'd flagged. Over 6 months, more than $4 million had moved through those shell companies. I hadn't seen the full picture at work, but now, looking at it all laid out, the pattern was unmistakable. Someone was laundering money through our firm, and Curtis knew about it. My phone buzzed. A text from Alicia, another analyst from Westbrook. Heard what happened. Crazy they cut you without warning. Drinks tonight? I didn't respond. I couldn't explain what I was thinking, and I wasn't sure who to trust anymore. I pulled out my wallet and found Jennifer Riley's card. Her direct line was printed underneath her email. My finger hovered over my phone. What would this accomplish? I was already fired. Fighting a mid-sized investment firm would be expensive, exhausting, and possibly career-ending. I'd be labeled a troublemaker. Maybe I should just move on, find another job, forget what I'd seen. My apartment felt suddenly small. I grabbed my keys and went for a drive. Ended up at the park where my grandmother used to take me when I visited her as a kid. I sat on a bench watching joggers pass by, dogs chasing frisbees. Trust your gut, Matthew. I could almost hear her voice. What did my gut tell me now? That something wrong was happening. That people with money were breaking rules and hurting others. That Curtis had chosen his side, and it wasn't the right one. And that I had a choice to make. When I got home, I printed out all the documents, 317 pages. I organized them chronologically, added tabs for each suspicious client, and wrote a summary of what I'd found. Then I placed everything in a large manila envelope. I didn't feel angry anymore, just calm, clear. I sent one email to Jennifer Riley, short and to the point. I found something you should see. Can we meet tomorrow? Her response came 20 minutes later. My office, 9 a.m. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Jennifer's office was smaller than I'd expected. No window, just walls lined with filing cabinets and regulatory manuals. She gestured to the chair across from her desk as I closed the door behind me. I'm no longer employed here, I said, placing the envelope on her desk. But I thought someone should know about this. She didn't open it right away. Tell me what I'm looking at first. I explained what I'd found. The shell companies, the routing patterns, the inflated invoices. How Curtis had told me to drop it and how I'd been fired the next day for restructuring reasons. Jennifer's expression didn't change as she listened. When I finished, she opened the envelope and began scanning the documents. You kept copies of internal financial records, she said finally. Not a question. Yes. That's against company policy, potentially illegal. I know. She studied me for a long moment. What do you want out of this, Matthew? Nothing. I just couldn't walk away knowing what was happening. Jennifer sighed and closed the folder. I'll look into it, but I can't promise anything. She slid the envelope into her desk drawer. And you should know, this could come back on you. Hard. I stood to leave. I understand. Do you? Westbrook has powerful clients and expensive lawyers. If you're right about this, people will lose their jobs. Maybe go to jail. They'll fight dirty. They already fired me. What else can they do? I got my answer 3 days later. A certified letter from Westbrook's legal department arrived at my apartment. They were accusing me of theft of proprietary information, breach of confidentiality, and defamation. They demanded I return all company documents immediately and sign a statement retracting any accusations I'd made about improprieties. The letter ended with a thinly veiled threat. Failure to comply would result in pursuing all available legal remedies. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Matthew, it's Curtis. We need to talk. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. I don't think that's a good idea. Look, things got out of hand. I know you're upset about losing your job, but this isn't the way to handle it. If you drop this now, we can work something out. Maybe even get you back on the team. What team would that be, Curtis? The one that looks the other way while clients launder money? Silence on the line. Then, you have no idea what you're talking about, or who you're dealing with. These people. He stopped himself. Just meet me for coffee. 15 minutes. No thanks. You're making a mistake, Shaw. A big one. After I hung up, I called a lawyer. The consultation fee was almost a full day's pay from my old salary, but I needed to know where I stood. The attorney, Elaine Donovan, specialized in corporate whistleblower cases. She listened to my story without interruption. You've put yourself in a precarious position, she said when I finished. But if what you're saying is true, there are protections for whistleblowers. The problem is proving retaliation when they've couched your termination as a restructuring. So I should just back down? Let them get away with it? She leaned forward. I didn't say that. I said it's precarious. We'll need more evidence linking your termination directly to your discovery. On my way home, I noticed a black sedan parked across from my apartment building. The same car had been behind me when I left the lawyer's office. Could be coincidence, could be paranoia, or it could be that I'd stumbled into something much bigger than I realized. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Curtis had said. These people. Who was he afraid of? The clients? Someone inside Westbrook? I pulled out my laptop and began researching the Harley Group more thoroughly. They were a private equity firm with investments in real estate, emerging markets, and several industries I'd never heard of. Their CEO was Thomas Harley, a man who rarely appeared in the press and had no social media presence. The company website was sleek but vague about their actual holdings. Then I found something. A small news item from 3 years ago, before I joined Westbrook. The Harley Group had been under SEC investigation for potential securities fraud. The case had been abruptly dropped. No explanation given. I dug deeper. Found an archived article mentioning that the lead SEC investigator had suddenly retired mid-investigation. Coincidence? A knock at my door startled me. It was nearly midnight. I peered through the peephole. Jennifer Riley stood in the hallway looking tense. "Can I come in?" she asked when I opened the door. I stepped aside. She entered quickly, glancing behind her before I closed the door. "Were you followed?" I asked, only half joking. She didn't smile. "Maybe, I'm not sure." She placed her bag on my kitchen counter and pulled out a flash drive. "I found more. A lot more. You just scratched the surface." She connected the drive to my laptop. Folders appeared, labeled by date going back 5 years. "The Harley accounts aren't the only ones," she said, opening documents. "There are at least 3 other client groups running similar schemes, all high value, all protected. Protected by who?" Jennifer looked me in the eye. "By Jonathan Westbrook himself." Jonathan Westbrook, the founder and CEO of the firm, the man whose name was on the building. "How high does this go?" I asked. "The CFO is definitely involved. Probably the head of client services, too. They've been moving money offshore using our firm to make it look legitimate." I sank onto my couch. "Why are you showing me this? Why not go to the authorities?" "I needed to be sure first, and..." She hesitated. "I needed someone else who knew. Someone outside the company. Insurance." "Insurance against what?" 3 years ago, an analyst named David Weber found something similar. He went to the SEC directly. 2 days later, he was in a car accident. Didn't survive. My mouth went dry. "You think..." "I don't know what to think. But his notes mentioned the Harley Group specifically." I stared at the screen, at the web of transactions and names. This wasn't just fraud. This was organized, systematic, protected at the highest levels. "What do we do now?" I asked. Jennifer closed the laptop. "We go to someone who can't be bought, someone outside their sphere of influence." She pulled a business card from her pocket and placed it on the table. Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have a contact, she said. Someone who specializes in financial crimes. But once we do this, there's no turning back. For either of us. I thought about Curtis's warning, about the black sedan, about David Weber. When do we meet them? I asked. Tomorrow, if you're in. I nodded. I'm in. After Jennifer left, I copied all the files from her flash drive, then hid it behind a loose baseboard in my bathroom. Insurance of my own. That night I packed a bag and didn't sleep in my apartment. Some instincts you learn to trust. The FBI office was unmarked, tucked away in a nondescript government building downtown. Agent Tessa Harding didn't look like the FBI agents in movies. No suit, no stern expression. Just a woman in her 40s with practical shoes and tired eyes. Tell me everything, she said. From the beginning. For the next 2 hours, Jennifer and I laid out what we knew. The shell companies, the money movement, the selective access to certain accounts, the retaliation, the possibility that this connected to an earlier investigation. Agent Harding took notes, asked pointed questions, and occasionally made phone calls to verify specific details. When we finished, she sat back in her chair. If you're right, this is a major case. Money laundering on this scale usually involves other criminal enterprises, drug trafficking, corruption, tax evasion. So you'll investigate? Jennifer asked. We already are. Your information corroborates something we've been building for months. She looked at me. But we'll need your testimony. That means going on record, possibly in court eventually. I thought about my career prospects after being known as the guy who brought down his former employer, about Curtis's warning, about my grandmother's voice in my head. I'll do it. Agent Harding nodded. We'll need to move carefully. These people have resources and connections. For now, tell no one about this meeting. She handed each of us a card with just a phone number. If anything unusual happens, anything at all, call this number immediately. As we left the building, Jennifer touched my arm. You should consider staying somewhere else for a while, just until this breaks. I'd already been staying at a budget hotel for 2 nights. Ahead of you there. Smart. She smiled slightly. You know, when Curtis hired you, he told everyone you were too quiet to make waves. Looks like he misjudged you. He's not the first. That afternoon, I got a job interview at a smaller financial firm across town. I didn't mention Westbrook's accusations or the FBI investigation, just highlighted my skills and experience. The hiring manager seemed impressed, said they'd be in touch. 3 days later, as I was leaving the hotel, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Parking garage, level 3, blue Honda, 20 minutes. No name. But only one person knew I was staying at this hotel, Jennifer. I debated calling Agent Harding, but decided to check it out first. I took precautions, parked 1 level up, approached on foot, stayed near the stairwell. The blue Honda was there. Driver's side window rolled down. But it wasn't Jennifer behind the wheel. It was Trevor, the analyst who'd been fired before me. Get in, he said. Quickly. I hesitated. Please. It's about Jennifer. I slid into the passenger seat. How did you find me? Jennifer told me where you were staying. Yesterday, before they took her in. My stomach dropped. Took her in? Who? Westbrook Security. They're saying she stole confidential client information. She's being questioned by their legal team right now. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, I know what you both found. I saw it too 6 months ago. That's why I got fired. Why are you here now? Because Jennifer helped me when no one else would. And because what's happening at Westbrook is bigger than we thought. He handed me a USB drive. This has account information for offshore holdings, copies of altered financial statements, and recordings of conversations between Westbrook executives and Harley Group representatives. Jennifer managed to get it out before they locked down her computer. I stared at the small device. Why not take this to the FBI yourself? Because Westbrook has people everywhere, even in law enforcement. Jennifer thought you might have a contact we could trust. He looked at me. Do you? I thought of Agent Harding, her tired eyes, her immediate recognition of what we'd brought her. Yes, I said. I think I do. I called the number on Harding's card from Trevor's car, told her what had happened to Jennifer. Within an hour, we were in a different FBI office with different agents creating a secure copy of Trevor's files. By evening, things moved quickly. Jennifer was picked up by FBI agents as she left Westbrook's offices, ostensibly for her protection. Warrants were being prepared, and I was being moved to a secure location until everything broke. The last person I called was my lawyer, Elaine. They're making their move tomorrow, I told her. I need you there with me. I'll be there, she said. And Matthew? Whatever happens, you did the right thing. That night, alone in an anonymous hotel room provided by the FBI, I thought about how quickly life can change. 3 weeks ago, I was just an analyst doing my job. Now I was at the center of what Agent Harding called one of the biggest financial fraud cases of the year. I didn't feel scared anymore, just ready. The raid happened at 9:02 a.m. on a Tuesday. FBI agents entered Westbrook Investment Partners through every available entrance. As they secured the building, other teams simultaneously executed search warrants at the homes of Jonathan Westbrook, the CFO, and 3 senior partners. They also arrived at the Harley Group headquarters in downtown Denver. I watched from Agent Harding's car, parked across the street. Employees streamed out of the building, looking confused. Some were being interviewed by agents on the sidewalk. Others just stood in groups, checking their phones, trying to understand what was happening. Then I saw him, Curtis Brandt, being escorted to a black SUV, no handcuffs but clearly not going willingly. His face was tight with anger, or fear, maybe both. He's cooperating, Agent Harding said beside me. First one to flip, trying to cut a deal. Of course he was. I almost laughed. Curtis looked up as the SUV pulled away from the curb. For just a moment, our eyes met through the 2-car windows. He didn't look surprised to see me, just defeated. By afternoon, the news had broken nationally. Major investment firm raided in fraud investigation. The coverage mentioned a whistleblower who had uncovered the scheme. My name wasn't public yet, but it would be soon. Jennifer called me from her lawyer's office. They're offering immunity to lower-level employees who cooperate, she said. The executives aren't so lucky. Jonathan Westbrook was arrested at his home. They found shredded documents in his fireplace. What about the Harley Group? Thomas Harley is nowhere to be found. Left the country last week, apparently, but they've frozen the company's assets. 2 days later, I sat in a federal prosecutor's office going through my testimony again. The evidence was overwhelming. The documents Trevor and Jennifer had saved. My original findings. Banking records seized in the raid. And now, statements from at least 6 Westbrook employees who had witnessed parts of the scheme but been afraid to come forward. The prosecutor, a serious woman named Diane Lawrence, closed her folder. Mr. Shaw, your testimony is crucial to this case, but I want you to understand what you're walking into. Defense attorneys will try to paint you as disgruntled, incompetent, or motivated by revenge. It won't be pleasant. I understand. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Curtis's warning, about Jennifer being detained by Westbrook security, about David Weber, who might have been silenced permanently. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. The first indictments came down a week later. Jonathan Westbrook, the CFO, and 2 senior partners were charged with multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Curtis was charged as well, but with lesser charges, thanks to his cooperation. The morning the indictments were announced, I received a job offer from the firm I'd interviewed with earlier. They'd heard about my role in the case through industry channels. The offer came with a significant raise and a direct message from the CEO. We need more people with integrity. I accepted. The last piece fell into place a month later. A letter arrived from the SEC's whistleblower program. Because my information had led directly to successful enforcement action, I was eligible for a substantial reward, 15% of the penalties Westbrook would pay. The estimated amount made my eyes widen. I wouldn't have to worry about money for a very long time. That evening I visited my grandmother's grave, placed fresh flowers by her headstone. "You were right," I said quietly. "Trust your gut." I could almost hear her laughing. 6 months after the raid, I sat in a coffee shop downtown, reviewing quarterly reports for my new employer. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Westbrook CEO pleads guilty in fraud case. Jonathan Westbrook had finally accepted a plea deal. He was facing 7 to 10 years in prison, and the company that bore his name no longer existed. Its legitimate assets had been acquired by competitors, its reputation destroyed. I closed the alert and returned to my work. The scandal had faded from the headlines, replaced by newer crises and controversies. But its effects lingered in stricter regulations, industry-wide compliance reviews, and occasional mentions in business school ethics classes. Curtis had received a suspended sentence and probation for his cooperation. I'd heard he was working at his brother-in-law's insurance agency in Nebraska. He'd tried to contact me once, sent an email that began with, "I hope you understand." I hadn't finished reading it. Jennifer had landed on her feet, recruited by a regulatory compliance firm where her experience was highly valued. We met occasionally for coffee, bound by our shared experience but not quite friends. Trevor had moved to Seattle, started fresh with a tech company that had nothing to do with finance. And me? I was doing well. The new job challenged me in good ways. My boss valued my attention to detail, my unwillingness to look the other way. The whistleblower reward sat mostly untouched in an investment account. I'd used some to buy a small house outside the city, a place with a garden my grandmother would have loved. I still checked my rearview mirror more often than most people, still kept digital backups of important documents, still trusted patterns more than promises. But I slept better at night. As I paid for my coffee and packed up my work, a young man approached my table. Early 20s, nervous energy, clutching a portfolio. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Matthew Shaw?" I nodded cautiously. "I'm Jason. I just started at Meridian Financial." My new employer. "They told me I should talk to you about their compliance protocols, that you're the best person to explain why they matter." I studied him for a moment. Eager, earnest, reminiscent of how I'd been not so long ago. "Have a seat," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Let me tell you a story about patterns and why they're important." He sat down, opened his notebook, pen ready. I began at the beginning. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't making noise. It's simply refusing to look away when everyone else does.
"That internet money of yours will never amount to anything real," my dad said, clinking his beer bottle against my uncle's. The backyard erupted in laughter. "My name's Eli Granger. I'm 27, and for the past 6 years, I've been building blockchain solutions from my cramped one-bedroom apartment in Tulsa. Not that my family understood, or tried to. Every reunion was the same script. Polite questions about when I'd get a real job, followed by crypto jokes that stopped being funny years ago. I smiled and nodded, the way I always did. Let them laugh. The notification I'd received yesterday was still burning a hole in my pocket, the European firm's final acquisition offer. $27.5 million for my optimization. Protocol. 6 years of 18-hour days, ramen dinners, and learning from every failure had led to this moment. You know, son, my dad continued, lowering his voice so only I could hear, Derek says they're always hiring at the dealership. Good benefits, too. I took another sip of my beer and watched my brother-in-law Derek across the yard, showing off his new watch, commission from selling luxury cars. He caught my eye and gave me that same sympathetic look he always did. While I was driving home that night, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister Jessica. Don't mind Dad. He just worries about you. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat without responding. What they didn't know wouldn't hurt them. Not yet, anyway. When I got home, I checked my laptop one more time. The wire transfer was pending. By Monday morning, I'd have more money than everyone at that barbecue combined. I closed the laptop and stared out the window. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. I taught myself to code when I was 14, hunched over a second-hand laptop my mom bought at a garage sale. I'd stay up until 3 in the morning, learning everything I could. My parents thought it was just a phase, like my brief obsession with astronomy or skateboarding. He'll grow out of it, they'd say when relatives asked what I was doing locked in my room all day. But I didn't grow out of it. I graduated high school, got a partial scholarship to state college, and majored in computer science. Everyone expected me to follow the usual path. Internship, entry-level coding job, slow, climb up the corporate ladder. Instead, I dropped out in my junior year when I saw the potential in blockchain technology. My dad didn't speak to me for 3 months. My mom cried. Jessica tried to mediate, but eventually stopped defending my choices at family gatherings. I just don't understand why you'd throw away a degree, my dad had said when he finally started talking to me again. Your grandfather worked in the oil fields for 40 years so his kids could go to college. I tried explaining once, talked about decentralized finance, about cutting out middlemen, about the future of secure transactions. Their eyes glazed over within minutes, so I retreated to my apartment and focused on building. While friends got married, bought houses, and posted vacation photos, I lived on energy drinks and takeout, solving complex problems and creating efficiencies no one had thought of before. The first sign that things were changing came 8 months ago. I'd published a white paper on a new blockchain protocol, and 3 days later, my inbox was flooded with messages from venture capitalists. One of them, Allison from Vertex Capital, asked for a meeting. Your optimization algorithm is groundbreaking, she said over video call. Have you considered what this could be worth? I hadn't. I was just solving a problem that interested me. 3 weeks after that call, I received my first acquisition offer, $3 million. I turned it down. 6 weeks later, $8 million. I turned that down too. Jessica called around that time. Dad's having some health issues, she said. Nothing serious yet, but he might need surgery later this year. I asked if they needed money. She hesitated before saying they'd figure it out. When I hung up, I stared at the latest offer in my inbox, $15 million, and felt a strange hollowness. What was the point of solving problems if I couldn't solve the ones closest to home? 2 days before the family reunion, I sat across from 5 executives in a virtual meeting room. After 6 rounds of negotiations, they'd reached their final offer, $27.5 million, with a 2-year consulting contract that would pay an additional $180,000 annually. We need your answer today, Mr. Granger, the CEO said. I asked for an hour, walked around my neighborhood, past families grilling in their yards, kids playing basketball in driveways. Normal lives, visible lives, the kind my parents could understand and approve of. When I returned to my apartment, I signed the contract and closed my laptop. That should have been a moment of triumph. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. 6 years of work, culminating in more money than I'd ever dreamed of, and I had no one to share it with who would truly understand what I'd accomplished. At the reunion, watching my family laugh at internet money, I realized something. They weren't mocking me because they didn't care. They were doing it because they couldn't see what I saw. They lived in a world where success looked like Derek's commission watch or my cousin Kyle's management position. I thought about telling them, considered pulling out my phone and showing them the pending transfer. But as my dad passed me another beer and clapped me on the shoulder with that mixture of affection and disappointment, I decided against it. This wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. This was about something else entirely, something I was just beginning to understand. On the drive home, I pulled over at a scenic overlook above the city. The lights of Tulsa sprawled beneath me like a circuit board. I made a decision right there. I'd do things differently. No announcement, no revenge, no "I told you so." Instead, I opened my banking app and set up a new private account. Then I made a list of names: my parents, Jessica, her daughter Emma, my uncle Frank, who'd lost his job last year. Even Derek. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and none of them would ever know it was me. A month after the acquisition, I met with a financial advisor in Oklahoma City, a discreet woman named Olivia who specialized in sudden wealth management. "Most people in your position want to make a splash," she said, reviewing my plans. "Buy a mansion, a supercar, show everyone they've made it." "That's not me," I replied. "No," she smiled, "I can see that." We set up several anonymous charitable trusts and family assistance funds. I kept my apartment, my used Honda, and my regular routine. The only change was the knowledge that my family would never face financial hardship again. They just wouldn't know I was behind it. 3 weeks later, Jessica called in tears. "Emma needs braces, Dad needs surgery, and they just cut Derek's commission structure at work," she said. "I don't know what to do, Eli." "I might be able to help a little," I offered, already knowing I'd pay for everything. "Thanks, but..." She hesitated. "Dad doesn't want charity, especially from you. He thinks you need to focus on getting a stable job instead of your crypto thing." That stung more than I expected. "What did you tell him?" "I said I wouldn't ask you," she admitted. "I'm only calling because I'm desperate." After we hung up, I sat with that conversation for a long time. My own father would rather struggle than accept help from me because he thought I was failing. The irony was almost too much. The next day, Jessica called again, confused and excited. "You won't believe this. Some foundation called about a community grant for families with medical needs. They're covering Dad's entire surgery." "That's amazing," I said, knowing the foundation had been created just yesterday with a single anonymous donor, me. And get this, Emma qualified for a full orthodontic scholarship through her school. They said someone endowed it specifically for kids in her grade. "Sounds like your luck is turning around." Jessica paused. "It's weird, right? All this happening at once?" "Sometimes good things just happen," I said. 2 days later, my phone lit up with a text from Derek. "Dude, did you hear about the farm?" My grandfather's farm had been in tax trouble for years. My dad and his siblings had been trying to save it, but they were always short on funds. "What about it?" I texted back. "Someone paid off all the back taxes, anonymous donation. Your dad's freaking out." I smiled as I typed, "That's great news." When I attended the small family gathering to celebrate saving the farm, I watched my dad give a teary toast about family legacy and miracles. Everyone was buzzing with theories about their mysterious benefactor. "Maybe it was Kyle," my aunt suggested. "He's doing well at that management job." Kyle shook his head. "Wish I could take credit." "Could be one of those tech billionaires doing random acts of kindness," Derek offered. My dad looked at me across the table. "Definitely not Eli's internet money," he laughed, but there was less bite to it this time. I raised my glass along with everyone else and said nothing. 3 months after the acquisition, I received a call from Allison at Vertex Capital. "They're integrating your protocol earlier than expected," she said. "The results are better than projected. Your earnout bonus just tripled." Just like that, my net worth jumped again. The initial $27.5 million was now closer to $40 million. I thanked her and hung up, then sat staring at the wall of my unchanged apartment. That night, my mom called to invite me to dinner. "It's been too long since you came over," she said, "and your dad has something he wants to talk to you about." When I arrived at my childhood home, the atmosphere was strangely tense. My dad waited until after dinner to bring up what was on his mind. "I've been thinking," he said, fidgeting with his napkin. "You've been working on this crypto thing for years now. Maybe there's more to it than I thought." I set down my coffee. "What changed your mind?" "I've been reading up on it," he admitted, surprising me. "After all these miracles happening to our family, I started wondering if maybe there are forces at work we don't understand." My mom nodded. "Your father thinks technology might be one of those forces, that maybe we've been too quick to dismiss what you do." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "Is that right?" I still don't understand it, my dad said. But I'd like to, if you're willing to explain it again. For the next hour, I walked them through blockchain basics. My dad asked surprisingly thoughtful questions. My mom took notes. It was the most interest they'd ever shown in my work. As I was leaving, my dad walked me to my car. "Son, I've been hard on you," he said quietly. "I worried you were throwing your life away. But these past few months have made me think about what's really important. It's not what job you have or how much money you make. It's family." I nodded, unable to speak. "Whatever happens with this crypto business, I want you to know I'm proud of you for sticking to what you believe in. That takes guts." As I drove home, I realized something unexpected had happened. In trying to help my family without showing off my success, I'd inadvertently given my dad something more valuable than money. I'd given him the chance to come to terms with who I was on his own. The next morning, I received another call from Jessica. "Eli, something weird is going on," she said, her voice low. "Derek thinks someone is helping our family out, anonymously." "Why would he think that?" "Too many coincidences. The medical fund, Emma's braces, the farm taxes. Now he just got offered a job at a new dealership with better pay, out of nowhere. Someone's pulling strings." I kept my voice neutral. "Maybe your luck really has changed." "Derek thinks it might be you," she said bluntly. "He says you've been acting different, calmer, like someone who doesn't have to worry anymore." That caught me off guard. "Me? With what money?" "That's what I said," Jessica laughed, "unless your internet money finally paid off." I changed the subject, but after we hung up, I realized I'd underestimated Derek. He might sell cars for a living, but he knew how to read people. For the first time, I wondered if staying anonymous was the right approach after all. 5 months after signing the acquisition deal, I met with Olivia again to assess my financial strategy. "The anonymous approach is working well," she said, "but there's a problem with sustainable giving. Your family is starting to notice the pattern." I nodded. "My brother-in-law is suspicious." "You have options," Olivia explained. "Continue anonymously with more space between gifts, create a formal family trust with stipulations about privacy, or simply tell them the truth." I didn't answer immediately. Each path had merits. "What's holding you back from telling them?" she asked gently. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "At first, I didn't want to rub it in their faces. Now, I think I'm afraid it might change everything." "Money often does," she agreed. After careful consideration, I decided on a middle path. I would create a family trust, but reveal my role gradually, starting with the one person I trusted most to handle the information responsibly. The next day, I invited Jessica to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. "You're scaring me," she said when she arrived. "You never ask to meet like this." I slid a folder across the table. "I need you to look at this." She opened it and frowned at the legal documents inside. "What am I looking at?" "It's a trust fund for Emma's education, fully funded." Jessica's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "This is millions of dollars. Eli, what did you do? Sell drugs?" "No," I laughed. "Remember my blockchain project? The one everyone joked about?" Understanding dawned on her face. "You sold it." I nodded. 5 months ago, for $27.5 million. Jessica's coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. "Say that again." I explained everything: the acquisition, the consulting contract, the anonymous gifts. By the time I finished, Jessica was shaking her head in disbelief. "So all this time, while Dad was offering to get you a real job..." "I was trying to figure out how to help everyone without making it about me," I said. "You're unbelievable," she said, but she was smiling. "Why tell me now?" "I need your help. I'm setting up a larger family trust, but I don't want to announce it like some grand gesture. I'd rather everyone understand what the money is for and where it came from before they know how much there is." Jessica reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You always were the quiet, complicated one." Over the next few weeks, Jessica helped me lay the groundwork. She casually mentioned articles about blockchain success stories to our parents. She asked Derek to explain cryptocurrency at dinner one night, giving me an opportunity to add insights that made my dad look at me differently. We arranged a family financial planning session under the pretense of discussing the farm's future. I brought in an advisor, not Olivia, but someone who could speak generally about trusts and estate planning. The pieces were falling into place. My family was slowly beginning to see cryptocurrency as legitimate, and me as someone who might actually know what he was talking about. The final phase of my plan came together when Jessica mentioned that Emma's middle school was hosting a career day. "Would you come speak about being a developer?" she asked, giving me a meaningful look. It was the perfect opportunity. Career day at Emma's school fell exactly 6 months after I'd signed the acquisition deal. Jessica had arranged for my parents to attend to support Emma. Derek came too, curious about what I might say. I stood before a classroom of 12-year-olds and their parents and began simply. 6 years ago, I dropped out of college to work on something nobody in my family understood. They thought I was making a mistake. I glanced at my parents. They worried about me. The students looked bored, but the adults were listening. I was developing a blockchain protocol, a way to make cryptocurrency transactions faster and more secure. Most days, I wasn't sure if it would work. I ate a lot of ramen. I missed family events to debug code. People made jokes about my internet money. A few kids snickered. I smiled. 6 months ago, I sold my company for $27.5 million. The room went completely silent. I saw my dad's jaw drop. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. Derek's eyes widened in shock. But that's not the important part of the story, I continued. The important part is that success doesn't always look the way people expect. Sometimes the person in the old Honda and the same clothes they have worn for years is building something revolutionary. I finished my presentation by announcing a technology grant for the school, funded by me, to ensure every student had access to a computer and coding classes if they wanted them. When I stepped down from the podium, Emma ran up and hugged me. "That was awesome, Uncle Eli." My parents approached slowly, as if in a daze. $27.5 million, my dad said quietly. "Son, is that true?" "Actually, it's closer to $42 million now with the earnout bonuses," I replied. My mom started crying. My dad looked like he might too. "The farm taxes," he said. "Emma's braces. My surgery." I nodded. "That was all you?" "I wanted to help," I said simply, without making a big deal about it. Derek stepped forward and extended his hand. I knew something was up. Didn't guess it was this. He shook his head, laughing. "Man, I've been offering you car dealership jobs." "They were good offers," I said, shaking his hand. "Just not my path." 2 weeks after career day, I helped my parents move into their new house, a modest but comfortable place closer to Jessica and Emma, with no stairs to challenge my dad's knee after his surgery. I'd bought it through the family trust, with their full knowledge this time. "Still don't understand exactly what you invented," my dad said as we unpacked boxes in his new garage. "But I'm trying to learn." "That's all I ever wanted," I told him. He paused, a box of old fishing gear in his hands. "I'm sorry I didn't see what you were building." "You couldn't have known." "No," he agreed, "but I could have trusted you more." Later that evening, the whole family gathered for dinner on the back patio. Derek was talking excitedly about the coding classes he'd signed up for. "Never too late to learn new skills," he said. Jessica had quit her stressful accounting job to start her own practice with seed funding from me. She was already helping other families navigate financial challenges. Emma was showing my mom how to buy her first Bitcoin on a smartphone app. As I watched them, I realized something had shifted fundamentally. The money had changed our circumstances, yes, but what had really transformed was something deeper, a newfound respect, not just for what I'd accomplished, but for different paths to success. I slipped away from the table for a moment and walked to the edge of the yard. The sun was setting over Tulsa, painting the sky in oranges and purples. My phone buzzed with an email from Allison. Another company wanted to discuss my consulting services at triple my current rate. I put the phone back in my pocket without replying. It could wait until tomorrow. "Everything okay?" My dad had followed me out. "Just enjoying the moment," I said. He nodded, understanding in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Your grandfather would have been proud, you know, not of the money, of the perseverance." "I learned that from you," I told him honestly. He put his arm around my shoulders, a gesture that would have felt awkward months ago but now seemed natural. "Come on back to the table," he said. "Your mom wants to know if she should buy Ethereum next." I laughed and followed him back to the family I'd always had, but who could finally see me.